off. So
Yeah.
then where do you kind of see that there's a way that you, when you're working with somebody or you're even trying to discover maybe a new technique or something, that you're able to either bring in that feminine into the world of working out and science? And then even when you're having a conversation that might be more spiritually based, is there a way that you try to pull in the masculine into that world of a little bit more feminine, intuitive, flowy energy?
Just depends on who you're talking with. So that I think that's what the value in if you're ever around someone that seems to teach well, it's like, wow, that person, something about them, they educate well. Typically it's not because they're doing the same monologue to you in this room and that room and the next room and the that room they've done for the last 20 years. It's they're talking to you. Like that's
Mm.
they're bridging that connection. Like, okay, this is how I talk to you. And I'm just, I'm working to better myself as a teacher. I think I have a lot of work to go in that realm, and as a student, all the different things. But I think it's really being very specific to, okay, is this person excessively structured, analytical, superficial, gym bro? Everything is science based, or I'm not interested. Or is this for that person? I'd be like, okay, let's maybe lead into that, but I'm probably going to do a lot more listening, and do a lot more kind of like, maybe let's just do some breath work stuff and kind of like see where that goes. Or maybe we're going to start off and do something and just something more like flowy, because you've already overwhelmed yourself in this other structure side.
Mm.
But then if you get another person that comes in and they have like psychedelic tie-dye stretchy pants on, and they just got done doing a Vipassana retreat, and they have their, dreaming journal that they're working on before the session, and they might be kind of hypermobile, might be something that could be a thing with that person. They're very flexible, they're very open, they're very spacious, but it might be hard for them to kind of stay on task. Maybe they showed up, 15 minutes late for the session. Maybe they have a lot of ideas. I want to do this, I want to do. They have so much creativity, but they kind of don't seem to like get started and follow through with many things. And it's like, oh, okay, well, for you, I think we need to deadlift.
Mm.
Definitely deadlift. Let's like teach you how to squat. Let's like load your body and have you feel that feedback of resistance. I want you to just like learn how to lean into that resistance. And you're not going to change topics or pick up your phone. We're just going to lean into this resistance, and that's going to be your practice. So
And
it
so do you,
becomes really like movement and exercise can really truly become like a quote unquote like spiritual, life development practice.
oh, I feel that all the time, man. I know if I take, even if I have spiritual questions and I take them into the gym, it almost feels as if there are certain questions or blockages, I mean, for lack of a better word, that actually do get stuck in certain parts of the body. And by just working out, you move that energy through in a certain way that it is able to express itself or bring you new ideas or new insights into that question or feeling that you had or you were trying to explore in the first place.
Yeah, yeah, that's like Bessel van der Kolk or Peter Levine. Awakening the Tiger Within is a good resource for that. Bessel van der Kolk's his seminal book around that is called "The Body Keeps the Score." There's tons of other books like that. Robert Sapolsky has a good one, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. There's like I wrote about it in my book, The Aligned Method, which I largely was referencing, those people for the most part, and my own work with clients. But I like to come back to actual like what's data suggesting this, along with anecdotal experience. And it's a very blurry, nebulous space. From my perspective, the concept of trauma being stored in the body. I
Mm.
don't exactly personally know how it works. I know personally from my anecdotal experience and working with other people, it feels like there is a certain level of science and like physics to it. An example that I have, I'm presently working with a somatic therapist, which essentially means like it's a kind of a hybrid of like we talk, and then he has me listen into my body. And he's like, let's just sit with your body. You did this before this conversation a little bit, and just like notice if you feel just if anything comes up, You're not like actively, objectively looking. You're just noticing and seeing if anything you feel, comes up. And particularly kind of, it might be in relation to this conversation that we had, which was like kind of heavy. And, if you sit with yourself, or if I sit with myself and just like allow myself to listen, some of those maybe what could be just like annoying aches or pains that most people probably could resonate with, like, oh yeah, I have my thing in my back or my shoulder or whatever. Um, Oftentimes it is merely physical. And it is something where it's like, oh, you just have some inhibition of these muscles and we just need to work on that. And then oftentimes, particularly things that have like been more chronic and been around for a very long time, maybe they're like deep kind of in like the torso, or maybe like the viscera, organs, places like that, back. If you do allow the space to kind of lean into that, I I wouldn't have believed this, 5 years ago or something. I'd be like, no, this is who I think I'm very skeptical as far as people that are skeptical go. Like, I think I'm very skeptical. And I've had myself many like embodied experiences with that, where I'll be goddamned. Like, those parts start to speak if you actually allow yourself to listen. And those parts have, for me, it's a lot of visuals start to come up, and you allow your consciousness to travel, just like if you were maybe doing a really long meditation, or maybe you're doing some type of psychedelic thing, or whatever the thing is. Visualizations and stuff come up. Like, you have access to that in just normal waking life. It's just most of us have, our bandwidth is going to cell phone, work, computer, girlfriend. It's like on this plane, but there's a lot of stations we have access to. And if you allow yourself to listen into that, I would just be my suggestion, just allow yourself to kind of like listen, maybe just a couple channels deeper into some of those sensations in the body, and make sure you're very still when you do it, and kind of like, releasing most distractions and whatnot, and just really listen in. And in my experience with that, I've been like, oh my God, I've had this, one particular example, which was kind of recent. I've had this boy who, me, and it was like hiding behind a wall, and it was like very scared and like sad, has like kind of like this sad, scared kind of vibe to the boy. And it was scared of something on the other side of the wall. And I was able to talk to the boy. I'm like, my adult self is standing here with myself, talking to myself as a boy, because I'm listening into that part. And the boy starts to feel seen, and starts to feel heard, and starts to feel a little bit safer. And suddenly I start to feel this like weight that I didn't realize I had start to kind of just like dissipate a little bit, and just like, oh, like, wow, interesting. So there was a part, this is my anecdotal experience, but there's a part, this is like 3 weeks ago, but there's a part of me that has been, I think, held like a contracted pattern, I believe, since I was a little boy. This is common in the world of trauma work. If you have some type, like the meaning of trauma technically comes from a Latin word meaning wound, but the description of trauma, the way that we use it in culture, is some situation, scenario, that, or information that was too much for you to process in that moment. So instead of actually being able to circulate it and move it through the body and the mind, I'm like, okay, you just stuff it down and kind of repress and bypass, and like, no, not gonna feel that.
Push that
That
down.
the physics of that within in like human consciousness and psychosomatic, biology, is it, that information gets imprinted, it gets held. In Buddhist philosophical terms, they call this a samskara. If you've ever done like any type of, Buddhist stuff, sit in meditation for a while, so you'll start to feel these samskaras come up. Samskara translates to imprint, is the Sanskrit meaning of it. So we have these imprints that come up as a product of traumas that we've had in the past, because we sit and we listen in with them, and we be with them, and we actually like allow those start to come to the surface. They're able to come to the surface to actually be healed. And a lot of that contractive, bracing, holding, anxiety, trouble sleeping, racing thoughts, all of the different things, emotional eating patterns, addictive behavior, all of it, mostly avoidant bypassing patterns to get out of actually being with our, what we don't want to feel. And we haven't wanted to feel since we were whatever age. You start to address that, allow it to come to the surface, it like, it can actually start to heal. And that, I think there is actually like a certain level of consistency and almost science to that, but it's just too tough for science to really put that into a bucket and a beaker and analyze that and say, oh, here's the data on that. But I'm pretty sure there's a certain level of physics to the way that contractive bracing, traumatic patterns can get held in the body, and the tools to be able to purge and release and come into relationship with them.
Yeah, there for sure is a link there that would be amazing.